before the fourth round of negotiations between China and the United States, Trump made a small move and ordered sanctions against 23 Chinese enterprises. I didn't expect China to be so ruthless this time. In less than 24 hours, China launched a double punch and directly investigated the United States for 3 years. According to the Washington Post, the United States is making small moves again at a critical moment. The fourth round of economic and trade negotiations between China and the United States is scheduled to be held in Madrid on September 14th. On September 12th, the U.S. Department of Commerce suddenly announced the inclusion of 23 Chinese entities in the export control entity list. To be honest, this kind of routine is no longer uncommon. Americans like to show off their muscles at the negotiating table, hoping to increase their bargaining power. But unexpectedly, China's reaction speed this time caught Americans off guard. On September 13th, less than 24 hours after the United States announced sanctions, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce delivered 2 consecutive heavy punches. One is to initiate an anti-dumping investigation into imported analog chips originating from the United States. Moreover, the investigation period lasted for 3 years. Secondly, the United States launched an anti-discrimination investigation into its measures in the field of integrated circuits with China. This response speed cannot be overstated. The 23 Chinese entities that were blacklisted this time are mainly concentrated in multiple fields, such as semiconductors and integrated circuits, biotechnology, etc. Among them, the semiconductor field is the focus, with 13 related companies being recruited. This trick has been played by the United States for almost 7 years. Since the start of the trade war in 2018, the United States has included thousands of Chinese companies in various lists. What kind of entity list? Military industry list? Unreliable entity list? There are many variations, but how effective they are is another matter. The countermeasures taken by China can be said to be both fast and ruthless. The anti-dumping investigation into American analog chips involves more than just minor disputes, with the target being 4 American chip giants. You should know that the dumping rate of simulated chips by the United States on China is as high as 340%, which means that American manufacturers are engaged in a price war in the Chinese market, using low prices to impact local Chinese companies. And what's even more interesting is the 3-year investigation period. This detail means that all relevant trade practices starting from 2022 will need to be re-examined. Considering that these 3 years happen to be the most intense period of U.S. chip sanctions against China, the choice of this timing can be said to be a precise strike. The United States is imposing sanctions on Chinese chip companies while allowing its own companies to engage in dumping in the Chinese market, which is a double-standard operation that has been caught by the Chinese side. The actions of both China and the United States this time are very symbolic. The United States chose to impose sanctions before the Madrid talks in order to increase bargaining chips in the negotiations. China's decision to retaliate within 24 hours sends a signal of, "You come and go, I will accompany you to the end." The response from the Chinese side this time can be considered textbook level, as it neither exacerbates the conflict nor has a clear attitude. It is both reasonable and well-founded, and the timing is precise. The tactic of putting pressure before negotiations by the United States is not new. Almost every time before high-level talks between China and the United States, the US takes some action, as if not doing so would not show its presence. The US sanctions list is getting longer and longer, but its effectiveness is becoming increasingly limited. Despite the increasing sanctions imposed by the United States, China's exports of electromechanical and high-tech products to the United States will continue to grow in the first 2 months of 2025. This indicates that the resilience of the global industrial chain is much stronger than politicians in Washington imagine, and decoupling is not easy. On the other hand, China's manufacturing system is complete, the market size is huge, and relatively complete industrial chains have been established in many key areas. The sanctions imposed by the United States have actually accelerated China's process of independent innovation, which may have been unexpected by Washington. Now that the United States is imposing more sanctions, China's circle of friends is actually getting bigger and bigger, because other countries can see very clearly who is truly upholding global free trade. The Madrid talks are no longer simple economic and trade negotiations to some extent, but a game about the future global economic order. The United States is eager to maintain its hegemonic position, while China calmly responds to various challenges. From the comparison of the speed and intensity of this sanctions and countermeasures, it can be seen that the balance is undergoing subtle changes. The back and forth between China and the United States is likely to continue in the short term. But any attempt to solve complex problems through unilateral sanctions will ultimately be unsustainable.